They say you can tell a lot about a place by the way the rain falls. In my old hometown of Sacramento, it came down straight and hard, washing everything clean. But here in San Diego, the rain had a lazy way of drifting, like it couldn't decide whether to fall or float. I noticed that as I pulled my battered Chevy Impala to a stop outside my son's new townhouse, the wipers creaking their way through a fine mist. My back was stiff from the long drive down the coast, every crack in the highway sending a jolt up through the seat. Stepping out, I looked around the quiet street. The palms swayed gently, and somewhere nearby a dog barked, the sound echoing off stucco walls. I popped the trunk and hefted out my old duffel bag, still sturdy after all these years, even if the zipper stuck a little. My son, Matthew, was already coming down the steps, arms open and a practiced grin plastered across his face. "Dad! You made it!" he called, voice too bright, like he was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. I watched him as he came closer. At 37, Matt still had that restless energy, always tapping his foot or fiddling with his phone. But something about him felt off, like the smile didn't reach his eyes, or maybe his hands shook just a bit too much when he reached for my bag. "I got it, Matt," I said, keeping my grip on the duffel. His eyes flicked away, nervous. "You sure?" he asked. "Long drive from Sacramento. 6 hours isn't so bad with good music," I replied. "But you look like you've seen a ghost. Everything all right?" "Yeah, sure, of course," he said, swiping a hand across his forehead. "Emily's making your favorite, chicken pot pie." The mention of his wife seemed to calm him a bit, but not much. As we walked toward the door, he leaned in close and whispered, "Dad, we'll talk tonight, okay? Just, let's get you settled first." Before I could ask what was wrong, the front door swung open and Emily stepped out, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a smudge of flour on her cheek. She smiled warmly, real and welcoming. "Walter, you made it!" she called. I waved back, trying to match her cheer. Wouldn't miss Emily's cooking for the world. I meant it too. Whatever else you could say about my family, Emily was a gem. Inside, the place smelled like home, roasting chicken, herbs, the faint scent of cinnamon from something baking. For a moment, I let myself believe everything was fine. But as Matt guided me to the guest room, his hand gripped my shoulder a little too tight, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to jump out at us. The guest room was neat, but felt smaller than I remembered. I hung up my shirts, lining them carefully in the tiny closet. 45 years running an appliance store in Sacramento had taught me the value of order. It kept my hands busy, gave my mind less time to worry. But tonight, I could feel the worry seeping in, stubborn as rust. I took my blood pressure meds and peered out the window. There was Matt pacing in the small backyard, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. When did he start smoking again? Emily hated it, I knew. He took a drag, staring at the fence like it might answer whatever questions were gnawing at him. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, and listened to the house. Pots clattered downstairs, the TV mumbled about sports scores, and somewhere in the neighborhood, a siren wailed. But underneath it all, something wasn't right. The last time Matt called, he'd been cagey about money troubles. He'd always been a dreamer, sometimes a schemer, but never dishonest with me, at least, not until now. The way he'd acted tonight, like a man balancing on the edge of a cliff, made my gut twist. I heard Emily's voice drift up the stairs. "Walter, dinner's ready!" I stood, smoothing the wrinkles from my shirt, and took one last look at Matt outside. He flicked the cigarette away and squared his shoulders, bracing himself for something. So did I. Tonight, I had a feeling, would change everything. Dinner at Matt and Emily's always used to feel like a treat, like I was a guest of honor, not just the old man visiting from out of town. But tonight, the kitchen felt colder somehow, despite the warmth of the oven. Emily set the table with her usual care, lighting a candle and humming an old country song. Matt poured himself a glass of wine, then poured one for Emily and me. His hands trembled just enough that I noticed, even though he tried to hide it behind a joke about Dad's famous luck with traffic. We made small talk. Emily asked about the drive. I told her about a funny billboard I'd seen near Oceanside. Matt laughed too loudly, then stabbed at his chicken pot pie like it had personally offended him. Emily, always the peacemaker, filled the silence with stories from her new job at the school library. I tried to relax, but the tension in the air made my skin itch. I watched Matt. He barely touched his food, just kept slicing the crust into tiny pieces and pushing them around his plate. Every now and then, he'd glance at his phone, then quickly set it face down on the table. When Emily got up to refill the tea, he leaned over and whispered, "After dinner, Dad?" "I promise." I nodded, letting him have his secret for a few more minutes. I'd learned long ago not to push too hard. People tell you what they're ready to tell. I took another bite, chewed slowly, thinking about my shop back in Sacramento, the familiar smell of motor oil and hot coffee, the cluttered office where every bolt and invoice had its place. Life had been simple then. Now, sitting here, I felt like a stranger in my own family. Halfway through dessert, Emily's homemade apple cobbler, Matt finally put his fork down with a sigh. "I can't do this anymore," he said suddenly, his voice raw. Emily looked at him, startled. "Do what?" she asked gently. Matt stared at the table, his knuckles white. "Pretend everything's fine." He turned to me, and for a moment, I saw the scared little boy he'd been, not the grown man hunched over in worry. "Dad, we need to talk." "Now." Emily tried to protest, but Matt shook his head. "Please, Em. Just let me talk to my father." The two of us went out onto the small backyard patio. The night was cool and clear, the sounds of the city drifting in from a few blocks away, sirens, laughter, a distant train whistle. Matt pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, offered me one out of habit. I shook my head. He lit his, the flame catching briefly on his unsteady fingers. "I'm in trouble, Dad," he said, not looking at me. "Serious trouble." I let him talk. The words spilled out like water from a cracked dam. Credit cards, business loans, a failed investment with some guys who'd promised big returns. Now the payments were coming due, and the people he owed weren't the kind that sent friendly reminders in the mail. "It started small," Matt said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just a few thousand here and there. Then I tried to fix it, borrowed more, tried to cover the first loan. It just kept growing." He looked at me, eyes rimmed with red. "Now they want it all back, with interest. The kind of interest that gets people hurt if you don't pay." "How much?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. Matt swallowed, the cigarette trembling between his lips. "Over $1 million, he admitted. "I know it sounds insane. I know I screwed up. But I'm begging you, Dad, I need help. You're the only person I can trust." I stared at him. My hands felt heavy, useless. I'd worked my whole life for what I had, ran that shop through recessions, funerals, floods. I had some savings, my house, the retirement account Martha and I built together. But $1 million? It might as well have been 10 million. Still, I saw the desperation in my son's face, the way his shoulders curled in on themselves, as if bracing for a blow. "Matt," I said slowly, "I love you. But you're asking me to give up everything I have, everything I built, to bail you out. That's not something I can just decide over one dinner." He nodded miserably. "I know. I didn't know who else to turn to." A long silence stretched between us. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked and a car backfired. Matt finished his cigarette and crushed it out on the patio bricks. "I'm not saying no," I said finally. "But you have to tell me everything. Who are these people? What exactly did you promise them?" Matt hesitated, then pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolling to a set of messages. There's 3 of them. Names you probably don't want to know. But if I don't pay them back soon, they said they'd come after me. After Emily, too. Dad, I'm scared. I looked at my son, truly looked at him, the way his hair had started to thin at the temples, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the exhaustion in his posture. I remembered him as a boy, running down the street with skinned knees, begging for just 5 more minutes at the park. Somewhere along the line, life had battered that boy into this desperate man. Let's go inside, I said quietly. We'll figure this out. But first, you need to promise me you'll tell Emily. She deserves to know the truth. Matt nodded, shame etched deep in his face. Inside, the kitchen was quiet. Emily was wiping down the counters, her face drawn and tired. I cleared my throat, and she turned eyes wide. Emily, I said, Matt has something he needs to tell you. The words hung in the air, heavy as stones. It was time to let the truth out, no matter how much it hurt. Matt's confession came out slow at first, like he had to wrestle every word into the open. Emily listened, arms folded tight across her chest, her eyes going from concern to shock, then finally to something like heartbreak. I stood by, watching the 2 of them, a strange mix of anger and pity twisting in my gut. He told her everything, about the business deals gone bad, the spiraling loans, the threats from men who didn't care about excuses or payment plans. Emily covered her mouth, tears shining in her eyes as the truth kept coming. When he finally finished, the silence in the kitchen felt like the air before a thunderstorm. So, all of it, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. All the late nights, the secret phone calls, the cash withdrawals, it was all about them? Matt nodded, shoulders slumped. I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. I was stupid. I'm sorry, Em. I'm so sorry. For a long time, none of us said a word. The refrigerator hummed quietly, and somewhere in the neighborhood, a siren wailed into the distance. I glanced at the clock. It was just after 10, but it felt like the middle of the night. I cleared my throat. Emily, I know this is a lot to take in. But we need to stay calm and figure out what to do next. She didn't answer right away, just wiped at her eyes and stared at the tabletop. Finally, she spoke, her voice steadier than I expected. We need to go to the police. Matt's head snapped up, panic flashing across his face. No, Em, you don't understand. If we do that, if I go to the cops, they'll find out, and they'll come after you. After Dad. They told me what would happen if I tried anything. Emily let out a shaky breath, her hands twisting in her lap. Matt, we can't just pretend this will go away. You owe them $1 million. Even if your dad and I gave you everything we have, it wouldn't be enough. They won't just disappear. I nodded, stepping in. She's right, son. This isn't the kind of mess you can buy your way out of. These people don't play by any rules we know. If they're threatening your family, then you need to protect your family, even if that means trusting the authorities. Matt dropped his head into his hands. They know everything about us. He mumbled. Our address, where Emily works, your shop, Dad. They even mentioned you by name. He looked up, eyes wild. I never told them anything about you, I swear. I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just Matt's problem anymore. It was ours. The idea that someone out there, some nameless threat, could reach into the safety of my family and tear it apart, it made my fists clench. Emily stood up suddenly, the chair scraping back across the tile. I can't do this, she said. I need some air. She walked out to the backyard, leaving the door half open behind her. The night breeze brought in the scent of wet earth and cut grass. Matt and I sat in silence. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of his choices had pressed him down into something fragile and scared. Dad, he said quietly, if anything happens to me, promise me you'll look after Emily. Please. I put a hand on his shoulder. Nothing's going to happen to you, son. But we need to be smart about this. Tomorrow, we're going to get some advice from someone who's handled problems like this before. Not the police, not right away, but someone who understands people like these guys. I know a man, old friend from the army. He's worked security for big companies, seen his share of trouble. Matt nodded, his jaw tight. Whatever you say, Dad. Outside, Emily was sitting on the porch steps, hugging her knees to her chest. I watched her through the window for a moment. She looked so young, so lost. My heart ached for her, for Matt, for all the years I'd spent believing I could protect my family with nothing more than hard work and good intentions. After a while, I went out to her. She didn't look up as I sat beside her, just kept staring into the darkness. He's scared, I said softly. I know you are too. So am I. But we're not alone in this, Emily. We're family. That still means something. She took a shaky breath, and finally looked at me, tears streaking her cheeks. I don't know what we're going to do, Walter. Neither do I admitted. But we're going to face it together. The moon was high above the palms, painting silver stripes across the lawn. The world outside felt dangerous and unpredictable, but for a few moments, sitting there with Emily, I remembered what hope felt like. We went inside. Matt was asleep on the couch, or pretending to be. Emily and I locked the doors, double-checked the windows, and I'd put my old baseball bat beside the guest room door, just in case. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of Martha, wishing for her wisdom. The house was quiet, but my mind was racing. How far would I go to save my son? How much would I risk to keep us all safe? Tomorrow, I'd have to decide. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the window, had me reaching for the bat I'd placed by the bed. At some point, the rain started again, drumming a restless rhythm on the roof. Around 4 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep. I made coffee the way Martha taught me, strong, just a splash of milk, then sat by the window and watched the first gray light creep over the neighborhood. Matt shuffled in around sunrise, dark circles under his eyes. You didn't sleep either, huh? He asked. I shook my head. He poured himself coffee and joined me at the table. For a while, we just sat in silence, two tired men waiting for courage to catch up with fear. By mid-morning, Emily left for work. She was quiet, but squeezed Matt's hand and kissed my cheek before heading out. The gesture reminded me how much she meant to this family. Once she was gone, Matt and I sat down to make some calls. I dug out an old address book from my bag and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Tom, it's Walter Benson. I need a favor, a big one. Tom Jenkins had been my commanding officer back in Nam, and afterward he'd worked security for half the tech companies in California. If anyone knew how to handle dangerous people without getting the police involved, it was Tom. He listened as I laid out the basics, leaving out some of the uglier details, at least for now. I can meet you this afternoon, Tom said. Bring Matt. I want to look him in the eye. We'll talk at O'Reilly's Diner, back booth, 3 p.m. sharp. The hours crawled by. I tried to keep Matt busy, helping him patch a broken fence post, sorting through bills, anything to keep his mind off the phone that never stopped buzzing with messages he refused to answer. By 2:30, we were on the road. O'Reilly's Diner was a throwback, all red vinyl and checkered floors, the kind of place where the coffee never runs out. Tom was already waiting, a mountain of a man with a crew cut gone gray. He shook my hand, then sized up Matt with eyes that missed nothing. After introductions, Tom cut right to the chase. Walter says you're in trouble? Tell me what kind. Matt looked down, embarrassed, but repeated most of what he told me. Tom listened, arms folded, then asked pointed questions. How much money? What kind of threats? What exactly these men said? Tom frowned. This is organized crime, son. Not your average street thugs. The best thing you can do is document everything: calls, messages, any contact. Make copies. Don't try to negotiate. If they make contact, you say nothing without legal advice. Matt swallowed hard. But if we go to the police, they'll know. They said they'd hurt my family, my wife, my dad. They know where we live. Tom nodded. That's why you need to keep your routines unpredictable. Change your routes. Never be alone if you can help it. Walter, you got a safe place you can go for a while if things heat up? My place up north, I said. But I'm not running unless I have to. Tom handed Matt a burner phone. Use this for anything related to those men. If they call, record it. And Walter, don't let your guard down, not even for a second. The meeting ended with a promise. Tom would run some background checks and see what he could dig up. As we drove home, Matt was quiet, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. That evening, Emily cooked again, her way of fighting fear with routine. After dinner, Matt surprised us both. Dad, would you come out for a beer? There's a place down the street, Charlie's Taproom. It's quiet. I need some air. And maybe just talk. Emily looked worried, but I squeezed her hand. We'll be careful, I promised. Charlie's Taproom was the kind of bar where the regulars all knew each other. The wood was scarred and the jukebox played old Springsteen, but it felt safe, familiar. Matt and I sat at the bar, nursing pints. For the first time in days, he actually seemed to relax. We talked about baseball, old fishing trips, even laughed a little. But even as I let my guard down, I noticed the bartender, a heavy-set man with a silver beard, watching us with careful eyes. When Matt excused himself to the restroom, the bartender leaned over. You Walter Benson? He asked in a low voice. I nodded, suddenly wary. He wiped a glass, voice barely above a whisper. Listen, I don't know what kind of trouble your boy's in, but a couple of rough-looking guys came around earlier, asking about you. You and your son should get out, now. My heart thudded. Why are you telling me this? He shrugged. Had an uncle in a jam once. No one warned him, and it cost him everything. Just go. Through the kitchen. Back door leads to the alley. Don't look back. Matt returned just as the bartender's warning finished. I grabbed his arm. We're leaving. Now. No questions. He didn't argue. We slipped through the kitchen, out the service door, into the cool night. In the alley, I caught my breath, the smell of fried onions and cigarette smoke swirling around us. We didn't stop until we reached the next block. For the first time, I saw real fear in Matt's eyes. He realized this was bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. And now so did I. We moved quickly, sticking to the side streets, away from the lights and curious eyes. Matt kept glancing over his shoulder, breathing hard. What just happened? He hissed as we rounded the corner near a closed-up bookstore. Who was that bartender? Someone who did us a favor, I said, pulling him along. Doesn't matter why. What matters is we keep moving and keep quiet. For a while, we walked without talking, each lost in our own thoughts. My mind raced. If those men were close enough to ask around at Charlie's, then it was only a matter of time before they tracked us somewhere else. I thought of Emily, home alone, trusting us to keep her safe. I'd promised Martha, years ago, that I'd look out for our boy. But how do you keep a promise like that when the enemy is invisible, ruthless, and everywhere at once? We ducked into a small all-night diner. The waitress, skinny, silver-haired, with the tired patience of someone who'd seen it all, didn't even blink when we slid into the corner booth and kept our coats on. She poured us 2 coffees without asking. The hum of the refrigerator, the clatter of plates, the murmur of truck drivers at the counter, all of it was comfort and camouflage. Dad, what do we do now? Matt finally asked, his voice raw. We sit tight. We wait for Tom to call. No sense running home if they're watching the place. He nodded, staring into his coffee like it might tell him the future. My phone buzzed. For a moment I panicked, then realized it was the burner Tom had given us. I answered quietly. Walter, it's Tom. I did some digging. Your son's problem is a man named Dorsey, Eli Dorsey. Former loan shark, now running muscle for some Vegas syndicate. If he's in town himself, it's serious. And he doesn't leave loose ends. My blood ran cold. I'd heard the name before, a whisper around poker tables, a rumor at the VFW. The kind of man who left scars and stories in equal measure. Tom, what do we do? For now? Stay public. Stay unpredictable. And whatever you do, don't go to the cops yet. Dorsey's got eyes everywhere. I'll see what I can find out about his crew. I'll call when I know more. I thanked him, hung up, and relayed the information to Matt. He paled, pushing his cup away. I never wanted to drag you into this, Dad. Doesn't matter, I said. We're here now. All we can do is keep each other safe. A group of night shift nurses entered, laughing, breaking the tension in the diner. I watched every face, every movement, but saw no sign of trouble. Still, I couldn't relax. My instincts, old as the army and twice as stubborn, wouldn't let me. We stayed until nearly dawn, then slipped out the back and took a roundabout route to a cheap motel by the highway. I paid in cash, using a fake name, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager dodging a truant officer. Matt looked exhausted, but sleep was out of the question. I propped a chair against the door, sat by the window, and watched the lot for anything suspicious. Around 8 a.m., Emily called Matt's phone, panic in her voice. Where are you? I woke up and you were both gone. The house phone rang at 6. No one spoke, but I heard breathing. Matt tried to sound calm, but I could hear the fear in his voice. Emily, pack a bag. Go stay with your sister for a few days. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even your friends at work. We'll call when it's safe. I heard Emily's breath hitch, then she whispered, Okay. Please, Matt, please don't do anything stupid. I love you, he said. I'll explain everything soon. Just go. Now. After the call, Matt slumped against the wall, looking more broken than ever. I can't believe this is my life, he muttered. I was just trying to fix my mistakes. I never wanted anyone hurt. Son, nobody wants trouble until it's at their door. I told him quietly. But you're not alone. You got me. And you got Emily. That's more than most folks facing down Dorsey can say. He managed a thin, grateful smile. Thanks, Dad. We passed the day in silence, keeping the curtains drawn and the TV on low. Tom texted once. Working contacts. Stay put. By dusk, my nerves were shot. I felt every ache in my bones, every regret in my heart. I kept thinking about how one decision, one bad loan, could ripple out and endanger everyone you love. At sunset, Tom finally called. Walter, listen. Dorsey's guys are planning something tonight. They think you'll try to run, maybe head back up to Sacramento. If you do, they'll be waiting on the highway. Should we stay here? I asked, my voice low. Safer for now. But Walter, don't trust anyone. And if anything happens, call me first, not the police. I've got a friend who can move you if things get hot. I thanked him, feeling both relieved and terrified. As I ended the call, I saw headlights sweep across the motel curtains. Matt and I held our breath. Were we just another set of marks in a game we could never win? Or did we still have a chance, one last hand to play? I thought of Martha's old saying, you only lose when you stop fighting. So we waited, and listened, and prepared. Tomorrow, I would need every ounce of strength I had left. The night pressed in close, thick with the kind of dread you can almost taste. Matt lay on the motel bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as if he could see the future written in the cracked plaster. I stayed by the window, every sense straining for sounds, a car door, footsteps, any sign we'd been found. Time crawled. Every minute felt like an hour. Around midnight, Matt's phone vibrated on the table, the harsh buzz slicing through the silence. He grabbed it, eyes darting to me before he answered. The voice on the other end was low and rough, a stranger's tone that sent chills down my spine even from across the room. "Matthew, you're making us nervous." That was all I could hear, but Matt's face drained of color as he listened. "Yes, I know. I'll get it. Just give me time. Please." A pause, then the click of the call ending. Matt set the phone down, hands shaking. "They know we're hiding," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They said if I don't meet them tomorrow night, they'll come after Emily. And you. Did they say where?" I asked, my own heart pounding. "Pier 17. The old freight yard, midnight. Alone." He looked at me, haunted. "Dad, I can't do it. They'll kill me, or worse." I sat next to him, putting a hand on his back. "You're not going alone. Not while I'm breathing." My mind raced for a plan, but every idea seemed like suicide. We couldn't pay, couldn't fight, couldn't trust the police. That left one thing: outsmarting the devil. The hours ticked by, every sound in the parking lot setting my nerves on edge. Just before dawn, Tom called again. "I've got a man, former FBI. He owes me a favor. His name's Logan Pierce. Meet him at the 24-hour diner on 9th at 11 a.m. He'll help you set up." Matt and I drove out as the sun rose, the world looking deceptively normal, kids riding bikes, sprinklers watering tidy lawns. But under the calm, everything was different. We found Logan waiting in a booth, a quiet giant in a faded ball cap. He spoke softly, but with the certainty of someone who'd seen the worst and survived. "You're walking into a trap, but we can use it. Here's what we do." He slid us a burner phone, a tiny recorder, and a folded map. "We record everything. If Dorsey or his men threaten you, we get it on tape. I've got backup watching the pier, but you can't tip your hand. Make them talk. Stall if you have to." Matt looked like he might faint. I gripped his shoulder, grounding him. "We do this together, son." Logan outlined the plan again, drilling every step until even Matt could recite it through clenched teeth. "Whatever happens," Logan said, "don't run. Let them believe you're scared but willing. That's when men like Dorsey get careless." Back at the motel, we waited. Emily texted, "Safe at my sister's. I love you. Please come home." I typed back a quick reassurance, heart aching for the mess I'd brought to her door. Night fell hard and fast. At 11:30, Matt and I parked 2 blocks from the freight yard, the old piers hulking like skeletons against the bay. The air smelled of salt and rust. We moved in the shadows, keeping to the plan. When we reached Pier 17, the place was deserted, but the hair on my arm stood up. Dorsey appeared from the gloom, flanked by 2 men, one skinny, one built like a bulldozer. He smiled, a cold, shark-like grin that never touched his eyes. "You have my money?" he asked. Matt's voice trembled. I need more time. Please. I brought a down payment." He offered a thick envelope, stuffed with every dollar we could pull together. Dorsey took it, weighed it in his hand, then tossed it to the ground. "This is nothing. Do you think I'm stupid? Look, just give me a week." Dorsey stepped closer. "You already had your chances." He turned to me. "And you, old man, do you think your army tricks are enough to save your son?" My anger flared. "You're not touching him. Or his wife. You want your money? You'll get it. But if you touch my family, you'll have the feds breathing down your neck before sunrise." Dorsey laughed, but I saw something flicker in his eyes, a hint of caution. "You've got guts, Grandpa." I'll give you that. But guts don't pay debts. Behind me, Matt pressed the recorder, hidden in his jacket. Logan's plan depended on Dorsey making threats, and he was delivering, talking about consequences, hinting at accidents, if the debt wasn't paid. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe. Dorsey leaned in, whispering, "Last chance. Tomorrow midnight. Bring the rest. Or you'll see what happens to heroes." He melted into the shadows, his men following. Matt and I stood alone on the pier, hearts racing, every instinct screaming to run. Logan's car headlights flashed in the distance, our signal to go. We hurried back, silent, shaken but alive. In my pocket, the recorder held every word, a lifeline we'd have to use if we wanted to get out with our lives. Tomorrow would be the end, one way or another. The next day crawled by in a haze of exhaustion and nerves. Matt barely spoke. Every so often, he checked the little recorder, as if afraid it might erase itself. I spent the morning double-checking every part of Logan's plan, rehearsing what I'd say, what I'd do if things went sideways. Outside, the city carried on, kids walked to school, garbage trucks rumbled past, the world turning, indifferent to the storm in our lives. By nightfall, Matt and I were ready, or as ready as two desperate men could be. Logan met us one last time outside a shuttered gas station near the pier. His jaw was set, and his words were few. "The feds are listening. The audio you got last night was enough to open a case. They're watching Dorsey. But you need to stall him tonight. By just a few more minutes, and they'll swoop in." Matt swallowed hard. "And if they don't?" Logan didn't blink. "They will. But if anything happens, I'm less than 30 seconds away." We walked through the fog down to Pier 17 again, every step echoing in my chest. Dorsey was already there, pacing by the water like a wolf. His men hung back in the shadows. He spotted us and grinned, teeth flashing in the dim light. "You brought it?" he barked. Matt took a shaky step forward. "It's not all here. Just let me explain." Dorsey's patience snapped. He grabbed Matt by the collar, yanking him close. "I'm tired of games," he growled. "Tonight's the last time you see the sun if you're lying to me." That's when I stepped forward. "You want to make an example of someone, do it to me. But let my son go. You'll get your money, just not tonight." Dorsey shoved Matt aside, turning that cold stare on me. "Old man, you think I won't." Before he could finish, headlights snapped on at the far end of the pier. Doors slammed. Suddenly, men in windbreakers were pouring out, weapons drawn, voices booming through bullhorns. "FBI. On the ground. Now." For a split second, Dorsey tried to run. His goons reached for their jackets, but Logan's team was faster. In seconds, Dorsey and his men were face down, hands behind their heads, agents swarming them. I could see the rage and disbelief on Dorsey's face. He'd been outplayed, and he knew it. Matt and I stood frozen, the adrenaline making my knees shake. An agent approached, flashing his badge. "Mr. Benson? Mr. Benson? You're safe now. We've been tracking Dorsey for months." That recording was the last piece we needed. Matt started sobbing in relief, his hands shaking so hard he nearly dropped the recorder. I put my arm around his shoulders, feeling him lean against me like he was 5 years old again and monsters still lived under the bed. It was over. Or at least, the worst of it was. They took our statements, collected the evidence, and sent us back to the motel with an escort. Emily was waiting there, pale and teary-eyed. She ran to Matt and hugged him so tight I thought he'd crack in two. I hugged them both, the weight in my chest lifting, just a little. That night, none of us slept much. But it wasn't fear that kept us up, it was relief, gratitude, and the overwhelming realization that we were alive, together, and free. The days that followed were a blur of police interviews, news vans, and paperwork. Dorsey and his men were charged with extortion, conspiracy, and a laundry list of other crimes. The story hit the local news, but our names were kept out of it, thanks to Logan and the feds. Matt started seeing a counselor. Emily, too. The debts were gone, wiped clean as part of the sting operation. It wasn't a miracle, just good luck and hard work from strangers who became friends. I took the first bus back up to Sacramento, eager for the peace of my quiet house and the old routines that had kept me sane for years. One afternoon, Matt called. His voice sounded stronger, steadier. "Dad, I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. I don't know what I'd have done if you hadn't come." I looked out at my overgrown lawn, the sprinkler ticking in the dusk. "That's what fathers do, son. We fight for family. And sometimes we get lucky enough to see them find their way back." After we hung up, I stood for a long time in the doorway, watching the sky fade from orange to blue. I thought of Martha, and all the promises I'd made her. Maybe I hadn't always done things right. Maybe I'd missed too many games, worked too many late nights. But when it counted, I was there for my boy. And in the end, that was enough.